Okay, so if everybody's feeling settled in, we're going to get started here pretty soon. Just to start here, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Tom Charney. I'm currently a landscape architecture student over at the SEAS Graduate School. And as for why I'm here today, I'm honestly owe a lot of thanks to the Center for Japanese Studies for providing me a fellowship for this academic year. I kind of tried to make Japanese studies informally part of what I do over at SEAS, and it seems to have panned out pretty well here, considering that I'm here kind of because of the funding that you guys provide. And not only is it my tuition that you guys helped with, it was also the trip over to Oregon this past summer that helped me get in touch with the Kurisus. So I'd like to just express my thanks for all you guys' support. But also to move into the presentation here, I have a few announcements here for CGS in general. So next week at 5 p.m. we have the next lecture here on queer legacies, Wither the LGBTQ boom in Japan. This will be given by Professor Claire Marie, and she's from the University of Melbourne. Again, the lecture will be at 5 p.m. and will be only offered in webinar form on Zoom. The next announcement is that in that same evening at 7:15, we're going to be having, as part of the CGS 75th anniversary film series, they'll be showing the 1990s film Cure by Kiyoshi Kurosawa. And again, just to reiterate, this will be at the State Theater, Theater number 2, at 7:15 p.m. So please, if you have the time, go and attend both those events. Programming here at CGS is great as always. And then in regards to today's presentation, there will be a Q&A function, so please submit your questions and we will try to get to them, as many of them as possible within the time. There's also a live transcript or closed caption that is enabled. If you'd rather not be seeing that, just go to the bottom right corner of your screen and hit disable. And then if you all are still raring to go on more CGS activities, there is of course the social media accounts on the U of M CGS event page and Instagram and so forth. But without further ado, I'd like to introduce the Kurisus. So of course, today we'll be having Hoichi Kurisu give a talk today about his career. And insofar as where that began, it started in the 1960s or so when he first came over with his father for his landscape maintenance company. And while he was there, he noticed that although there was a lot of affluence in the area, there wasn't a whole lot of attention being paid to well-being. And it's how he started his own philosophy on how nature can really connect with people and provide the fundamental well-being that, material things can't really provide. And so with that philosophy, he went back to Japan in 1964 to Tokyo to go start an apprenticeship for 4 years under Kenzo Ogata. And then he, of course, brought those skills back over here to the United States. Over that career here and also back in Japan and abroad, he received 2 National Landscape Awards, both from the First Ladies, Barbara Bush, as well as Miss Reagan. But nowadays he is currently based in the Portland, Oregon area, and he has a lot of residential projects as well as out-of-state public garden projects that he works on. If you guys are familiar with the Frederick Meyer Garden, he actually did the design and installation of that. Also in the Midwest is the Rockford in sorry, the name escapes me, but Rockford, Illinois has the Anderson Japanese Garden. And lastly, he served as a director for a time at the Portland Japanese Gardens, as well as did a restoration on a waterfall at the Portland Japanese Gardens. So if you haven't seen any of these projects yet, I highly recommend that you make the trip. Closest one, of course, would be Frederick Meyer. It's not just Hoichi Kurisu-san today that will be presenting. It will also be his daughter, Michiko. She also works as a independent photographer, and she's based in Delray, Florida, where she also runs a organic, let's see, it's a food forest, right? What's the next phrase you use to describe that? It would be community garden, exactly. So she, of course, also has a green thumb that she puts into practice. I also have to reiterate as well, as part of the funding you guys provided me to do my thesis work, I have a great deal of gratitude to give to the Kurisus in regards to making a connection to the Oregon State Penitentiary, which they will be discussing today. but that's personally my favorite project and why I'm so happy that I got the opportunity to go and work with them. But without further ado, I've said enough, and I'd like to give the floor to the Kurisus.
We're good. Thank you for being here today. Not quite. Can you hear me? Everybody hear me okay? Good. Okay. Yeah, thank you for being here today. Thank you, Tom, for your interest in our work and your persistence with your studies. You know, Kurisu gets a lot of inquiries from all over the place from students, and I'd say about half of them kind of disappear. Partly that's our fault. You know, we're busy and don't always get back in time. But I know from your thesis work that you've really stuck it out and learned a lot about bureaucracy in various places around the world surrounding gardens. Also to go wherever you are for your excellent logistics coordination. I wish that you could arrange all of Kurisu's travel. So thank you for that. There is so much to say about healing gardens and about Japanese-style gardens within the history of healing gardens. So today we're just really going to be scratching the surface. In the interest of time, I'll talk for a little bit about basically an overview of some of Kurisu's healing gardens, and then hand it over to my father, Hoichi, who will dig in more to the essence and really what happens when we talk about healing. So let's go. The recognition of the sacred in wild nature is something that's been in Japanese collective consciousness since ancient times. And I suspect that a lot of you know more about Japanese history than I do, so forgive me for any ignorance. But I come through it really through the filter of our work in Japanese gardens, and if I misspeak, please correct me in questions and answers. But this sacred, this idea of demarcating trees, boulders, ponds, and even kind of open space as pure is something that predates Japanese gardens by 1,000 years. So this reverence for wild nature, for nature as you discover it in the forest and the hillsides and the coastlines, this is something that underlies Japanese garden design. And one of the words for Japanese garden, Nihon Teien, there are other words, but these two kanji, te and en, kind of embody the spirit of Japanese gardens. You take wildness, literally territory, but meaning uncontrolled nature, and combine it with bordered fields or controlled nature, and you get that spirit that you find in almost all Japanese garden design. So when you think of Japanese gardens, what words come to mind? Anybody? What are the first words that come to mind? Tranquil. Or nothing. Maybe you think nothing. I'm sorry? Zen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yes? Bonsai. Yeah. Yeah, those are great answers, and they're indicative actually of how, in some ways, how Japanese gardens have entered our consciousness outside of Japan, right? The qualities of them, the what they look like, and some of the features that they have. Japanese gardens are a living art. They come from a long history of evolution in Japan. They've been evolving in Japan for about 15 centuries and outside of Japan for only about 150 years. There are about 5 or 6 distinct periods within Japanese history where you see aesthetic change in Japanese garden design. and sometimes distinct innovations. Things like the Zen garden that we often refer to dry stone gardens as. Those were kind of leaps of innovation. And like any other art, Japanese gardens evolved under the influence and within the influences of culture, society, politics, religion, economics. They continue to evolve under those influences today. You know, when Japan opened its doors to the world for one of the first times after almost 200 years of isolation, they exported culture, and Japanese gardens were almost always part of that export. So around 1870s, maybe the World Fair started, and you get replicas of Shinto shrines and gardens with them. And this was how many people in the West or outside of Japan first encountered Japanese culture. And they tended to love it. They were so cute, the gardens. They're miniature, they're almost escapist. Since then and through modern times, gardens have entered into our consciousness in different ways. And in a kind of interesting twist of garden fate, the early gardens were copies of Chinese gardens, the very early period gardens. Japan quickly developed their own style, but now, today, Japanese gardens have entered our popular consumer culture, and you can buy a teeny-weeny plastic Zen garden manufactured in China for your desk in America. So gardens have really gotten around. But the social history of Japanese gardens cannot fully explain the attraction. Japanese gardens have fascinated people all over the world for a really long time. We believe that it has a lot to do with the way gardens make us feel. And I don't know if I can do this. Thank you. The historian Kendall Brown, historian of Asian art and a researcher of Japanese gardens, writes, untethered from simply representing Japan by proxy, Japanese-style gardens are blooming in diverse ways. So we're going to explore that a little bit. And one of the first things that we'll talk about is how in our work we've seen a shift from gardens being just Japanese gardens outside of Japan being primarily cultural destinations to starting to evolve into a kind of universal space. So 50 years ago, when Hoichi started designing and building, nobody was really talking about healing gardens. They just really liked Japanese gardens. The Anderson Gardens that Tom mentioned in Rockford, Illinois, has anyone been there to the Anderson Gardens? Not too far away. It started when one man, John Anderson, happened to be on a business trip. He visited the Portland Japanese Gardens, really liked what he saw and thought, wouldn't this be fun to do in my backyard? So he connected with Hoichi, and they started transforming a swampy backyard into a little Japanese garden, which then grew, and they bought the neighbor's property and the other neighbor's property. And fast forward many decades, about 4 decades, almost 50 years, Anderson has become an incredible resource for the community. They are open 6 months, just 6 months out of the year. They close in winter. But in that 6 months, about 100,000 people visit, and they get to see the changing of the seasons. There's paths, there's authentic Sukiya-style architecture made by carpenters from Japan. And Anderson offers wonderful cultural programming. But what's really great about Anderson is they understood that what they have is not just a cultural gem, but acres of nature, acres of a space that can impact well-being. And they fully embrace that. So you go to their website and you see right at the top, wellness and nature. And you click on that and they start to educate you about all the benefits. This hasn't anything in particular necessary. It's not specific to Japanese nature. It's specific to nature. And you scroll down and you see amazing offerings for programming, for well-being. These are available to the public, sound and gong bath sound, activating all of your senses, yoga, tai chi, meditation, grief counseling in the garden. So you see what could be just, and would be fine, just as a cultural destination, becoming activated, right? Gardens in the past tend to be passive. You go, you see, it's cute, you have lunch and move on. But gardens now can be activated, especially something like this, Anderson, that has a lot of space to move in. You don't necessarily need a lot of space, but it's the purpose. It's the idea that you can take this space, understand how it has impact on people, and offer that to the community. In addition to public programming, Anderson has two focus programs. One is for Rosecrans kids. This is a local facility in Rockford that treats young adults, mostly teens, with substance abuse problems. So it's a treatment center where some of these kids get to come for 2 hours to Anderson Gardens, work with the staff, connect with culture, connect with nature, get their hands dirty in garden tasks, and even practice some mindfulness meditation. The second one is Path to Renewal. It's a book that Anderson is a community partner for. It's developed by a retired clinical psychologist, and it's essentially a self-guided tour to help people use the power of nature to reach a higher awareness of themselves, to heal for mental and physical and spiritual well-being. This is something they offer to really any group that feels they can use it. They train facilitators, and then those facilitators can bring their groups and utilize the garden as they see fit. If anyone is interested in more about the Path to Renewal, I have a few handouts you can pick up later. So a second project, like Anderson, is a public garden down in Southeast Florida where I am based. It's the subtropics. It's an unlikely place for a Japanese garden. Usually you're growing coconut palms. But it's 16 acres, and it's the legacy of a former Japanese farming colony called the Yamato colony. George Morikami, the last surviving and I guess the only member who stayed in the area, donated land, and this park has become his legacy. So in 1999 to 2001, Hoichi and his crew came down to Florida and renovated and expanded these gardens. So the museum states its mission as engaging a diverse audience by presenting Japanese cultural experiences that educate and inspire, which they continue to do, and it's wonderful. Hoichi, when he designed this garden, envisioned it as a healing space. So education and cultural connection is wonderful, and even that is a healing practice in its own way. Our work at Kurisu is seeing the Japanese garden as a universal space, something that can speak even beyond culture to people from all over the world, no matter what your culture, for inner healing. About 5 years after we opened that renovated garden, the Morikami and Florida Atlantic College of Nursing conducted a research study. They were interested to see if garden walks could be successful interventions in depression among older adults. And they used different modalities, walking alone or together, using guided imagery and themes that help you use the garden metaphor to understand yourself better. So the study, in fact, did show that after 58 participants completed it, They felt less depressed and happier and more fulfilled and grateful for their life and for nature. And this study resulted in the Stroll for Wellbeing program 2 years later in 2008. This program is a self-guided tour now. Sometimes there are guides as well. But it uses many of those same things in the first study to help people connect to nature, deal with trauma, deal with grief, find renewed purpose through walking the garden. Over 1,200 people have participated in this program to date, and the Morikami has reached out to 40 different organizations, things as diverse as veterans groups, even pet bereavement, mental illness, cancer survivors, caregivers of cancer survivors. So these institutions, Anderson and Morikami, what they've realized is they have a cultural gem, but they also have like 28 acres collectively of healthcare. They have a healthcare campus. The next two projects are in fact healthcare, and the first one is in a little small rural town in Oregon, south of Portland. You see on the left Lebanon, Oregon in the 1920s. That's Main Street. There's one Main Street. And more recently, the town kind of boomed with the timber industry and also died with the timber industry. When Kurisu got involved in the early 2000s, it was pretty depressed. But there's a little hospital, a community hospital at the edge of town. You see it there, surrounded by fields. And they called on us to create a healing garden in a courtyard. It was an existing 11,000 square foot courtyard. And this story I'm going to cruise through, but we have to say, sometimes we talk for a whole hour about the story because there is so much. This little 11,000 square foot courtyard ended up becoming a critical reason the whole town revitalized. And that's not a short story, that's a long story. There's lots of people involved. But the basic facts are, it was an underused courtyard. People weren't even really accessing it. You could go out maybe to smoke and come back in. You see the before and the after, where Kurisu kind of densely planted. And there you can see it, there you can see it in the context of the entire hospital. It's a 25-bed hospital. There are many experiences you can have in the garden. So even though it's relatively small, we designed for privacy for those 4 populations. There's places for shelter. It's Oregon, right? The weather is like pretty wet and cold. There's easy modes of egress. There's interest in the plant and wildlife palette year-round. There are quantifiable benefits of gardens to something like a healthcare institution, things that impact their bottom line, that save costs, that make their institutions better. Things like positive distraction, nature as pain mitigation, even just reducing stress, which can help reduce staff turnover and physician burnout, which are huge costs to the healthcare industry. These things are all known benefits of gardens. This is the garden that you can see privately from the outside, but that is really there for viewing, is also there for viewing from the oncology wing, which you see in the glass here. You see on the glass here. So people receiving infusion therapy can look out on this garden. This courtyard was transformed, but the healing really started when people became transformed from the inside out. And that's what nature did for this hospital and for the town. The CEO at the time, Becky Pape, said to us, the impact of the healing garden on our patients and on our physicians and staff has been nothing short of extraordinary. From morale and pride to patient care, to a spirit of healing and recovery, it profoundly affects us every day. And what's interesting about that mostly is that she also admitted to us in a interview that when the garden was proposed, she really didn't understand how it was going to work. I won't say she was a non-believer, but you know, if you're a CEO and you have $1 million, like you know what you're going to spend it on. It's not going to be landscaping. It's going to be a new scanner or something that works. So this institution, again, led by the community and visionaries in the community, took this kind of leap of faith that completely changed the way they operate. It started to attract patients and staff from out of town. It got a lot of press. It put Lebanon on the map so much that a hospital in a medical university in California was looking for a satellite campus. And when they visited this hospital and felt the vibe, felt the healing spirit, felt that people were happy, they said, this is where we want to build our school. It's a school of osteopathic medicine. And it was the first medical teaching college in 50 years in Oregon. What followed was a veterans home, and then this campus that you see with a premier hotel, a big conference center, more medical offices, and of course a healing garden in the middle, which Kurisu was also honored to build. So Lebanon's booming. Now people have reason to come, they have reason to stay, they're meeting their spouses, they're getting married in the healing garden, which we love to see, and we'll see. There's continued growth. We mentioned Rosecrans back in Rockford, Illinois, near Anderson Gardens. Rosecrans treats teens for substance abuse, and they already have an existing successful program and different campuses. This campus happens to be about 50 acres, and Kurisu landscaped about 5 of those acres. We designed this garden with Japanese principles, as all of our gardens are designed, but with particular attention to how Rosecrans was already successfully programming. So they're working with a 12-step program. And as many of you probably know, there's so much metaphor in Japanese garden. Hoichi decided to take metaphor one step further and created 12 cascades in the water features to symbolize the 12 steps. There are destinations throughout this garden that kids can go to, and staff and the families. Spaces were designed specifically for certain types of programming, for small groups that needed more intimate interaction, and larger groups who might be learning meditative breathing. There's spaces for shelter, there's spaces for families to gather when they visit. The garden plays such a large role in their programming that they've collected, Rosecrans has collected poems the teens have written about the garden and published them in a book called, I think it's called Spirit of the Garden. I personally learned a lot from one of those poems. I try to interact with as many people who use our gardens as possible. And I had visited Rosecrans, but one of the poems I read really kind of blew me out of the water, and it made it clear that nature, one of the most powerful things that nature had done for this particular person was given her hope. And if you've never been hopeless, and I've had a pretty happy life, I don't think I've ever been hopeless. But it made me realize that if you don't have hope, that nothing is possible, that's it, that's the end. And that nature had the possibility, had the power somehow to give this young woman hope. We did surveys to try to understand better how the garden impacted the kids there at Rosecrans, and I just love this one answer. The question is, recovery is hard work. Is the garden in any way helping you recover? If so, how? And this person writes, yes, it's calming, and it makes things make sense, right? So easy. But honestly, the first time I read this, I was like, what? It's so you cannot overestimate how profound this answer is, right? Like, wouldn't you like everything to make sense? Right? I don't, there's a lot of things that don't make sense to me, but if you're confused and you're suffering from, you're a young person and you're suffering from substance abuse, like a lot of things don't make sense, right? There's probably a sense of injustice, which is hard to track. And this response made me think, yeah, the garden is working. Somehow the garden's working. Nature works at that holistic level, right? It's not a pill that we apply to ourselves, although studies have shown, as it said in a previous slide, that in 5 minutes you can show positive, biomarker response. Stress levels go down, heart rate, blood pressure, right? So it's sort of a pill in that way. It's like a 5-minute pill. Forest walking, right? Shinrin-yoku in Japan also has quantified like how much time you might need before you see real benefits that last 2 weeks later. So that's possible to quantify. But the real power we find in applying nature is a deep holism. It's by connecting ourselves, and everybody's different, to what nature has to teach us, what nature has to tell us, and that's different for everybody. You have to make that space for people to enter and then discover for themselves. And this last project I'll talk about is really a grand vision by someone named Diane Taniguchi-Dennis, who's a real visionary in water resource management, right? So unlikely places. Wastewater treatment facilities are not the first place you think of putting a Japanese garden, usually. And we're not the first people to do it. But wastewater treatment facilities are really not on most people's to-do list, right? It's something that happens out of sight. You flush your toilet, you do your laundry, gone. Well, Taniguchi-Dennis had this wonderful vision to hit a triple bottom line to not only meet EPA standards of water quality in this municipal treatment center, but to exceed them, to create clean water and increase biodiversity and create habitat and create a place for people. So she realized Diane Taniguchi and Hoichi are kind of kindred spirits from different ends of the spectrum, where she wasn't just thinking, oh, this is science and biology and we're going to engineer a natural treatment system with the right plants and let the water go. She also thought, what do our communities need? That our waste is part of our life. And how can we educate? What do people need? They need places to go. They need places to relax, to find peace. And that could be our wastewater treatment facility. So the vision is grand. It's 700 acres. Kurisu built what they call a wet garden. It's a Japanese, based in Japanese principles, but pretty wild looking, right? It helps biologically the water features help to aerate and cool the water. Bringing the temperature down is really important before it flows out into these extensive wetlands. Fern Hill is a sanctuary for thousands of birds, for critters, for things at a microbiological level. But it's also a sanctuary for people and programs that are getting people to exercise more, to go out with their families. They go to Fern Hill. When I was reading up on Fern Hill, I found this picture of a little kid sitting on the rock, and the first thing I thought was like, oh my God, is that safe? But it happened to be on a site called hikeitbaby.com. And it's a site I'd never heard of, but it lists baby and stroller-friendly hikes all over the country. It tells you all the details. If you're a mom, you need to know, are there restrooms, is there shelter? It's important things. And Fern Hill happened to be on there. So I thought, when you are treating wastewater and in a way that moms with their most precious things, their babies, say, hey, let's pack up the stroller and go to the wastewater facility for a stroll. You're doing something new and wonderful, that you're integrating all of life in one place. So while Japanese gardens for wastewater facilities seem like, the themes are really fundamentally the same. Purity. If you get beyond just, gray water and black water and you think, what does our waste, what is the implication of our consumer life? And what does that mean for how we move forward? You think, how do we purify our intentions? How do we purify our life to make our legacy cleaner? How do we make the world a better place? And what both Japanese gardens and this wastewater treatment facility have done is look back to wild nature. The natural treatment systems that you saw, that aerial, is highly engineered, but it's engineered to mimic nature's own intelligence, to mimic those systems that nature already knew how to do when it needed to purify itself. So it's a full cycle. We're learning from ourselves. We're learning from nature. We are giving to nature, recreating a healthy ecosystem, and the ecosystem is giving back to us. These ways of looking back to wildness in search of some kind of purity are part of Kurisu's tradition. Hoichi studied, as Tom mentioned, in post-war Japan. He went back to Tokyo in the 60s. And at that time, there was a naturalistic style of garden kind of taking hold called Zoki no Niwa. So that is Hoichi's story to tell, and I'll hand it over to him.
Wow, nice, bright, nice day. Thank you very much. Give us this opportunity to share with you past almost 59 years. I have been straight design and built garden. Today, I'd like to share with you what is the essence of the Japanese garden and that what effect to healing garden, not healing. And in order to that essence effect what we need, what's happening, I'd like to share with you. But little bit change the tempo. Will you stand up one more time? Yeah, and see each other, and probably everybody knows each other, but nice to see you or something. It's okay? First of all, I should say that Tom and the Gold and Alexis, it's to make it happen. This one, it's really appreciate. Before I go into core of our subject, give me a little time. I have a little story to tell you, and relating to later the subject. So I'd like to share with you. I was born 1939, March 14th. I guess you may guess my age. 1941, Japanese Navy ambushed the Pearl Harbor. That time I was 3 years old. And from that point, 1942, 43, 44, even the little childhood, something wrong, but everything for emperor. We are emperor's country. And anything we can do, we do. Particularly childhood is the food to fill up your tummy is the main things. But most of the rice, wheat produce, all young men went to the war, but after remaining the country is women, most of the women, and the older person, and the young like me remain the same. But we collect food-wise, we collect acorn nuts from the mountain and bring the sack of the acorn nuts and gather to the school. And they said those are going to the Japanese army for food. And anything you can find iron in the corner of the house or anything to bring to the school, that's going to the army. And we are Buddhist, most of them Buddhist country, and every house has a Buddha's chest. Our house also very nice Buddha chest and the Buddha there, and then is iron decoration and gold leaves, the hanging, the candlestick like that. So everything has to go. That much the situation is, country is sacrifice. But as a child, I never thought anything like is actually still we can go out to the mountain, find the wild the berries, and autumn is the wild the pears and plenty food. Is the summertime the little river and catch the little fish. It's really it's a fun of them to be with nature. And then 1945, August 6, 8:15, I sit down in the classroom, blue light, just to shake the building, and from the ground up noise, boom! That time is just like this weather. It's no cloud. What do you call Japanese sky? We thought it's a lightning and the thunder. But just almost building it almost torn down, but it's still standing, and we see the mountain. Lucky enough, we are behind the mountain. Big cloud. I remember 2 planes going through black. That's B-29. But anyhow, then the Nagasaki. Then within the 10 days, Japanese government unconditional surrender document on the deck of the Missouri destroyer. This 1945 is such a, for Japan, is a point is upside down. Actually upside down. It's a family system, education system, anything, economy, it changes. I think some of them knows, but it's a change. That's, I was in the middle of it. And economy-wise, capitalism. You have to have money. Otherwise, you cannot do anything. That one of the official signed the document on the deck of the Missouri destroyer that become prime minister. He said on a diet to the whole Japan, if you are not able to work, you don't eat. That's scare the Japanese people, particularly older people. But anyhow, after that is production. I'm lucky enough going through the school, but my colleague, even that give up the high school, they have to work and go to the city. And I was lucky enough to university and boarding house. In the morning, probably up to 1 or 2, I believe, is still the noise of something produced neighborhood. This is a common citizens area, not the industrial area. Something going on production there. And quiet time is, finally quiet time is 3 o'clock, 4:30, starting again. Japanese people is work, and destroy the family life, many neurosis, even the suicidal situation. That situation is some landscaper saw anything we can do it. After the war, as Michi, excuse me, not after the war, Michi explained it's a Japanese garden appeared the long history, many style, many form. That one is reflected by its particular areas, power, religion, cult, and the tea ceremony, all influence from the background. This garden, yes, reflected the society which Japanese people go through it. Our people need some comfort, peace. In order to give them a peace, is not expensive, like a samurai era, made of nice bonsai type pine trees and the big boulders. Instead of those gardens, cannot afford anyway. And this designer happened to be my teacher. What most comfort to give them is a real natural appearance, and not make man-made things here. Looks like untouched human hands. But to do that, it's more difficult. But that's his thought. And starting to this type of garden is spread the whole Japan. Even now is different. We have a problem. Ukraine and Africa and recently Los Angeles is killing many problems. It's the humans uncertain the mind. That's still this garden is effect. If this is important, if understanding really garden, Japanese garden, and the Japanese principle, then give you transformation, you say, your heart's difference makes that. But let me explain. I was with him day and night. It's Ogata. I feel very lucky. I never went back my apartment is before 12 o'clock. And the next door, 6 o'clock, is be at the office. But in order to make this type of the garden, you have to understand that the plants, and you yourself humble enough to communicate with those trees or bushes or boulders. I was usually taking around the visitors from foreigners to New Zealand, Australia, even America. The Sunset magazines, the authors start visiting here, but those people is visiting this kind of garden. This is Mr. Ogata's garden is such a humble, such a the gentle, meek, and the borders is less borders compared with other garden, but the most that borders looks like he used it. His attitude, the daily attitude, also meek and humble person. Now I believe in order to make this really effective garden, you yourself work really humble and not the ego. Be one level with nature. Then you can see. But this one is not one type of the garden, or one-time deal. It's an infinite battle to refine yourself and creating the space for the people, for actually you, not selfish yourself, try to understand that space. To understand each tree's borders, waters, everything is when this garden I visited the first time, as I said, it's try to understand the material, is the trees and the rock boulders. This is a basho, I think you know that. He put the 15-syllable Japanese letters to condense the universe, nature's essence there. He said, if you want to learn pine tree, you go to the pine forest. If the bamboo, you go to the bamboo forest. But if you do so, you have to leave your mind empty behind it. Otherwise, you never learn it. This Japanese garden, in order to understand, is you have to make your heart, your thinking, preconceived idea, you cannot get it. I this little bit confused this one. When I saw the garden, I told you when I was a child, it's really enjoyed playing around the mountains and the field, and actually I didn't mention, but my favorite place is my grandpa's garden inside. when I was playing in there, sitting down and dealing with kind of soil, all of a sudden this peony come up. Wow! I couldn't believe what they are, but not afraid. It's such a feeling, it's my friend. Almost I want to hug it, kind of feeling I had. I don't want to say by myself, but the childhood, nothing to agony, anything. It's just the way they are, we accept and feel that. It's that feeling is, you might say in our word, empathy. This garden, sorry. This garden, I felt that way. It's almost the same way I experienced the childhood, that feeling and this feeling. But all this, how you experience that's individual. But important thing is, right now I can see 50 years, people think, oh, wonderful garden, and I never seen in my life, the American expression is oftentimes here, but it's not quite transformed in your heart. People ask me, what are you doing through the garden? My answer is, I have been trying to create a space using a Japanese method, principle, to create the space with oneness with nature, the space, the oneness with nature. That's the Japanese essence, Japanese garden's essence. Without that, how much big borders, how nice village, how nice lantern bring in. Yes, beautiful, but real sense of Japanese garden's effect to transform you. Again, to be transformed is you have to work yourself too, not only designer. Japanese garden has the tools. Just to tell you, for example, is most of the Japanese garden has a bridge, and it goes to the bridge. They say it is, the guide people telling you everything behind it, and then you hear coming, gate, go through again, and new place. That moment is you are something, idea is put your agony behind it, much more purifying. Every time some go through it, gravel path get into it, you hear the crushing gravel sound is Mother's Earth sound. If you start to feeling that, is you are opening your empty agony's room is empty, little by little, and then go through is one of the our project, Morikami, she's there, is the bamboo forest, bamboo usually by wind, the squeaking. If you start hear the noise as something speaking or birds singing, that way, if you start to hear, then another emptied another one, and to go through the pathway, there's a dead twig, maybe branches coming through, and then pick it up and goes, instead of that's harder, then cut it off. Or go through the garden go this way, the row of branches coming out. And instead of cut it off, you can bow down and bow a little bit, go through, forward. That's another action to take the one of your agony out. In the Morikami project or another project, is the same things. Is something disturbing thing there? Is here is cut it off. It's a OSHA or somebody's the problem, so they will cut it. But the Japanese garden, that one is a part of the sort of the tools to take off one layer of your agony or your concern from your heart, and gradually to do many like this. One of the most important Japanese garden for me is a stepping stone. I'm used to tell my crew, it's a stepping stone is almost the value of cell phone, iPad. That much value there. Because that stepping stone is, you cannot go there like this. You have to, each step and the next step, just catching that, but it's a nice, right away, set the stepping stone is to lead your proceed. And then the little bigger pot, the stepping stone you see around there, something there is or camellia blooming, or nice moss patch is there. It's something you can discover. That give you from other agony to make you center yourself. Then gradually you start to understand Japanese gardens. That's the healing garden, and the people try to understand. We say healing garden is without empty yourself, otherwise not to transform yourself. You cannot say, I healed. Of course, some way is I got a nice feeling, but the real sense of the Japanese gardens healing effect is the core is there. Since building garden and try to create in that space, the 30 years ago is none of pay attention. Is even my colleague said that if I say it's a Japanese garden, we can heal the world. What? You're drunk? That kind of answer. But it's recently, particularly 10 years, 20 years, is the people's attention, how important the nature is. Michi presented the first picture is big trees, is the Shimenawa you call rice rope. It is respect to the nature or even the gods there, something like that. But show the respect of the nature. We, not only Japan is 1945, end of the Second World War on, nature is gone. Only production. United States is, yes, I don't say everybody, but we forgot. We forgot how important the nature is and what the teaching us. Because of we are so much influenced, materialistic, as you know, and how to make money and much richer than anybody else. Try to that chasing game, but nature is carrying another half to how important it is. If you understand, really, we can talk to the trees, boulders, that much you come to it. You don't, my experience, you don't craving want to eat big T-bone steak. Just a small piece, something we can eat, and very satisfaction. You don't desire is unnecessary things. It's a very simple way that life is, we start to see it. It's too much to say, but it's if we forgot the natures, half of our life essence, here we are. That's what I say. But again, I have been building probably my drawers, 15 to 2,000 drawing in there. 59 years I have been doing, but none of them people is responding full, the understanding. I kind of wondering, but here is opportunity come. Oh, wrong one. "13 feet high iron screen, and on the top of 4 feet of barbed wire with razor blade in there that nobody can get out." That's the Oregon's state penitentiary jail. And one time I called from them, and they are initiated. They said, "We want to have a healing garden. Can you help us?" I look at first my wife and the people, little bit doubt. No way, But I think about it. I'll go. I went there. Sit down together. Those guys is already about close to 20 years inside the wall. Other side is the president of the club. They have some few members club, Asian Pacific Family Club. They want to have something which is healing garden. That's not, I have been using past, but they use that word. Their dream is even in the jail has some fight, is race fight or anything like that, to everybody together be friend, or desire with break the wall from outside the community, impossible. When I met them, it's just a few words. We had just be one. Okay, let's do it. Because they don't have anything in their mind to want to show that somebody, or if we make that one, maybe credit for the get out of the jail. No, they want to do something. I know they said I did the mistake past, but now I want to do something. That's all. That simple desire, and we have been practicing is in order to real Japanese garden effect of the healing is that kind of mind. Otherwise, never work. So we started to do that, and they are over there. They have collected from the by the inside of the ground and corrected, made a model. Can you make like this? Oh, I think we can do, I can give you design, it'll be better than that. But anyway, those guys is a member. I never met nicer people than those guys outside of the wall. The kind of feel I had it. Anyway, designed and this stage, which sketch is state regulation. You cannot plant 3 feet high. In the borders in the 3 feet high, you cannot do it because those guys hide. And no, I said, we cannot do that. We can really healing garden. We have to do something a little bit different. But it takes from idea came up, and actually starting is 5 years took. But along the process is a healing. They saw administrative office, see that, and gradually they are easing out. And okay, you can do, and you can want to have more land, I can give you. That's a healing process, not only garden. About 200 you call AIC is inmate, is people helping. When we bring in, this, we don't have a picture, but it's the pine tree came into it from the gate. They go and then they crawl in under the tree, and I haven't seen 30 years, and tearing. Those guys is 32 years or 27, those kind of guy is just loving trees, natures, that much the value of the nature. And that's what I have been doing, but no response, but reassurance. I am right. I am right to track. We have to do this one. This guy is, I don't know how many said, but very, very old. I mean, the long time in the, here. Almost hugging, almost eating the soil, kind of way you walk. And this guy is really, as I said, it's not a small tree. It's, this one here is almost finishing stage. This you call boulevard, every morning, about 2,000 people here, this inside. And probably half of them every morning once, afternoon, lunchtime, go back and forth here and inside from the another people. But 2,000 in AIC's the facility. But we started here, it's groundbreaking here, people coming through, hey, you're doing good job. They said never say that kind of word. They have really regret the people. Still they have anytime fight kind of guys here, but the whole process is the healing process inside of the wall. You know why? One of the things is they don't have anything in the heart, in any agony, and that, like outside of the people, like me, it's, I want a Tesla or, something like desire, or though they cannot have the desire, but they give up that one and be themselves. Of course, not all of them, but this pretty much finishing product. They never seen the koi or duck because in the facility is nothing water, anything there. They wrote me the very exciting the text. We have a duck, you know. Duck is my place is messing around, you know. But anyway, flowers, really everything for them is exciting. Be with them, hugging, and really be one with nature. That's the healing. And the pathway go around there. They have a program. It's each the trip. Some go around the garden, but it's we give the nice basket, small basket, and if you see something, the weeds on the pathway, put it in here, and bring back. Which is that one with the pull, take out your agony, one take into the basket. Do so. If you go there, it's the most maintained garden in the Oregon. Very clean, no weeds. But anyway, that's a besides story, but really our Japanese gardens should be this healing we have to convey to the out of the world. We have to create that. Global, his name is. Everybody say, never see that smile from him. It's, he also helped us to the digging. We helped them, but he worked that too. But how much giving love from heart is a joy. And that's really this project was so much our themes, almost destination type of the meaning to us. You know, Tom is studying and, you know, sustainable society, city, whatever. It is important to solve the problem. But this is my experience word, take or not take, but inside healed is equally important. Without that, try to fix the drainage problem or grading problem or material problem. If you inside the heart is healed, then those kind of problem never happen. But it takes a long time. It could be, but to cure. But it's a theory is inside 100, you might say, and outside work is 100. Have to together. That's little by little world is start to recognize. This project is Atlanta and 1,200 acres and many the lakes around it, and their theme is protect the nature And nature is essential. And development is without destroying any, make a scar of the nature is a building, and then also food is farming, own permaculture type of things, own food, own production, and teaching how to cook. Those whole holistic type of the operation is going on right now in the world. And this one is Kobe. Kobe is next city is Osaka and Kyoto. Kobe is want to do something different city than anybody else, but they don't know what to do. And I gave some presentation. Is no way to compete. Nice garden make the Kobe compete in the Kyoto. No way. Big city is the surprising, the highest building to build and draw the people in the different city. No, that one doesn't last long. Why don't you? How much important nature is healing city Kobe. Instead of high building, high entertainment, such a things. And then, make it short, but it's explain that. Then they have interesting in there, and this is, I give the idea. This right now is happening right here. It's existing right now. Those all traffic, everything, other side of this is the, the rail station. Other side also traffic, everything put in the ground, and utilizing this open space like this, the forest, and also those white one is here and there is a robot, and here and there the kiosk type of things, people rest things, and the barcode there, and push a button, and nearby is a station, robot station, and bring to serve you the coffee or latte or whatever, that kind of idea. The Kobe has the biggest computer in the world, in the city. But we cannot avoid without AI, cyber world. We have to live together, but don't be, we are the slave. We have to use them as our helper. And this idea is actually, I have to go March, February 28th or so, and to make a model there, but it's the people start to realize how much man-made concrete building or how much you do and try to entertain the people doesn't realizing it's not last long. It's much more people's health, people's healing the city, which is, I feel grateful people feel that way. And actually 59 years I have been in this line of the landscape work. I hope future, don't forget inside the development. That's the real talking healing. Thank you.
Okay, folks, that's kind of all the time we have for today for today's session. So we will have to unfortunately close out the question and answer session. However, you can email me at charneth@umich.edu. Any of you who need a spelling on that, I can provide it. But if you would like me to forward questions to the Kurisus about some of their wonderful work they put on display here today, please feel free to email me. But with that, I'd like to thank the Kurisus again for showing your remarkable work and sharing your sentiment on what's important here in sustainability and landscape and so forth. And I hope you all had an inspiring session here today. And with that, have a good rest of your afternoon.